How can your perspective, part of what we're talking about tonight is providing common ground for our public deliberations, and how can your perspective, especially...
Yeah, let's not overdo that.
Right. That's right. Let's be tasteful. Yeah. How can your perspective provide that kind of common ground if it dismisses a large majority of the population as irrational, as stuck in what you call, in your book, the infancy of our race? I mean, doesn't that remove any room or incentive for people to try to reason together?
Not at all. I mean, religion is a private matter, in my opinion. I phrase it like this in my book. I just say, if you think that there's a creator who's made you specially and who watches over you and supervises you, who cares about you and wants you to do well and even wants you to survive death, I have to say, I think it's a preposterous proposition, because I have to be honest, and an irrational one, and a fatuous one, and a sinister one, because the idea of wanting a father who never dies and won't quit is infantilizing. But suppose you did think that, shouldn't it make you happy? It doesn't make them happy. It doesn't make them better at all. They won't be happy till I believe it too. So the first principle is, let's separate that. Keep it to yourselves. Go to any church you like. Build any church you want. Do it with your own money. Don't ask the government to teach this stuff to my children in a government school. We won't have that. And surely, in other words, I don't, when I'm offended by a filthy article I read about atheists and Jews and secularists, I have to, bombardments of stuff of this kind comes at me all the time. I don't go out and burn down the nearest mosque because I've been offended, do I? Don't be ridiculous. But I'm supposed to respect those who do such things. I'm supposed to treat them with an extra delicacy. Why should I be doing that? Who's the offended one here, really? I'm not going to make a big point about my feelings being hurt. I have a thick skin, I have a broad back, I've studied Socrates, I think the Socratic method's more convincing. But you act as if I'm the one who's offending them by saying, I find your beliefs actually rather unconvincing. And in any case, I'm not going to have them forced on me. Now, is that finally clear? Is it? I hope so. Good.
And right there's our first one. Please stand.
Mr. Hitchens, I wouldn't call myself a fan of yours, but I am a devout YouTube follower, so it's a pleasure to actually hear you in person.
Thank you.
I want to challenge an assertion in your book, and you argue that one of the reasons why religion poisons everything is because it's abusive to children. Now, multiple studies have shown that in the U.S., religiously active youth are less likely to be depressed and commit suicide, and they're less likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. So my question would be, how could child abuse have an empirically verifiable effect on youth that is so positive?
Was the question, I'll just say, audible to everybody? Right. So I fear that you would do this. You give me the task of making your question not just audible but intelligible. The gentleman asks, or claims to know, that the more religious you are as a young person in the United States, the less likely you are to be depressed or alienated, and connects this, by what means I don't know, to the question of child abuse, which is a euphemism for torture, rape, and psychic destruction of children. Two things. First, it is said that Louis Farrakhan's Nation of Islam group gets black kids off drugs. I have no means of knowing whether this is or is not true. But let's grant that it might be true. It doesn't seem to have been established, but it doesn't alter the fact that the Nation of Islam is a racist crackpot organization, which anyone interested in mental health would be well advised to stay away from. It is said that the Mormon Church has a lower incidence of misery in family life and higher motivations. That might, for all I know, be true. But it doesn't alter the fact that Joseph Smith's fake religion is an outrageous imposture on human reason and dignity. It's a cult. It's a regrettable fact that some people do better in cults because they're so weak-minded and cowardly that they need the support of a pseudo family. This says absolutely nothing at all about the value of religion, let alone its validity morally or philosophically. I hope that's clear. Since you've brought up the question of the rape and torture and psychic destruction of the lives of children, I suppose I will just do this.
I thought this might come up.
It's awkward because I know my vis-a-vis, Dr. Haldane, is a practicing Roman Catholic. But it does seem to me that after what we've learned about what the Roman Church has done to the children entrusted to its care, that I don't know of a single case, I've studied quite a lot of them, Australia, the United States, Ireland, France, Austria, Germany, Italy, and this is by no means an exhausted list, that there is no case where those children wouldn't have been better off if the secular courts had had the ordering of it, instead of private, secret religious courts that were interested not in what you call, rightly, the inviolability of the innocent, a precept, not a truth, but a precept that you invoked, but were instead concerned only with the silencing of the victims, the exculpation of the criminals, the covering up of the crime, and the continuing exculpation, cover-up, and blackmail of the victims, now practiced by the very head of this church himself, a man who his followers believe to be the vicar of Christ on earth. I ask you, who can think of this as other than a grotesque parody of even the most elementary principles of decency, ones which we don't have to be taught? Who doesn't know that the rape and torture and desecration of children is wicked, is an iniquity? And how I'm never going to be told again by the Roman Catholic Church that I wouldn't know good from evil if it wasn't for them. I'm sorry. I'm never going to hear that again. Good.